Welcome back to KTN Prime. My name is Robinson Okenya. Remember, earlier we had said that we are going to talk about the Persons with Disabilities Act 2025, and in a bit I'll be speaking to Senator Crystal Asige on the impact that act will have, the law will have on persons with disability. And but before we do that, I want to take a look at some of the key issues from, or rather some of the key points from the act, which was assented, the bill that was assented by President William Ruto. It's now law. So we quickly run through some of the key points that we have. So the rights of persons with disabilities, you have equality and non-discrimination, and then you have legal capacity, and of course this ensures that persons with disabilities can own property, access financial services, and make legal decisions. And then you have education. Under education, you have guarantees free, inclusive education and mandates accessible learning environment. And of course, we do have employment, where you require, it requires employees to reserve 5% of the jobs for persons with disabilities and provide reasonable accommodation. And then you have healthcare. Under healthcare, it ensures free medical care, reproductive health rights, and accessible health facilities. And then you have accessibility, which mandates barrier-free environment in accessing buildings, transport, and public services. You have the institution frameworks, which include National Council for Persons with Disabilities, and then they are the county governments. And then we do have incentives and relief, where you have tax exemptions, you have financial aid and subsidies, and then you have offense and penalties, where it's criminalizing abuse, exploitation, and harmful practices. And of course, the penalties include fines and imprisonment of up to life. And then you have miscellaneous provisions such as public participation, awareness, and transition. That is what we are going to talk about tonight. Welcome to the show, Senator Asige.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yes.
I think the job has just begun. As you can see, it's a very long bill,
yes,
or an act rather. And so the job, I used to think that writing law was the biggest part, the monster part of a job, but I think popularizing it once it's become an act is even bigger. Yeah, getting every single person to understand and know what's in the bill, I mean the act.
Yes.
I keep calling it a bill. Know what's in the act, know how it's going to help them, how to access these rights and freedoms. So that's going to be the bigger part of the job.
Yes. You decided to draft this in 2023. It's become an act in 2025. Before that, why did it probably take so long before we got such an act?
Right. There was a Persons with Disabilities Act of 2003 that was assented to by our former president, Mwai Kibaki. And actually, the reason that came into place was because he acquired a disability, if you'll remember.
Yes.
At some point in his tenure, he was in a wheelchair.
Yes.
So he became a wheelchair user, and only because of that reason was when he understood that it is a priority to look into disability rights, because he acquired one himself. And so in record speed, it took about a year or so for that act to move through Parliament, all stages of Parliament, and for it to be assented to. So that was, as you can see, pre-Constitution.
Yes.
2003 versus 2010 Constitution meant that that act, was not aligned with our Constitution.
Yes.
So there were provisions, there were things that were not speaking to our Constitution. And therefore, when I came into Parliament in 2022, as a first-time legislator, and of course, as a VIP myself, visually impaired person, and very passionate about disability work, I decided this would be my mission. If I were to do only one thing, I would want to repeal the old Act of 2003 and put in place something that is actually in alignment with our Constitution and other instruments that Kenya is assigned a signatory to across the world.
You were there when this bill became an act, and the president said that the challenges that are faced by persons with disability are rooted in social and cultural systems. If at all you can explain to us some of the social and cultural systems that have been posing a challenge to persons with disabilities.
I think it's a real mixture of religious beliefs, of cultural practices and beliefs, and also just people not understanding disability because of stories they hear, because of assumptions, historical discrimination, and things of the sort. So all of those things put together has created an environment where people with disabilities really do not feel safe, do not feel wanted, do not feel remembered, seen, or heard, or understood by anyone in society. And so we have become, in the past, just a small community of people who understand how we feel and what we go through amongst each other, but it's almost like us against the world. And so I think that's what he was speaking to when he mentioned that, because it's very much alive even today. There are some cultures who still throw away their children with disabilities, you know, who still lock them away, who still keep them at home because they don't want their community to discriminate against them or to tell them, we mama, something is wrong with you, kuna uchawi kwa hiyo nyumba. Because I even know, for example, one mom that comes to mind who gave birth to 3 children. They're all girls, 3 girls under the age of 15 right now. And they all were born with the Usher syndrome. Usher syndrome is a disease that declares you deaf and blind, so you become deaf-blind. And this one mother gave birth to 3 children who had the exact same condition. So now she was chased from her community. So it's things like that that are still very, very prevalent. And so we needed, and now we have an act that speaks to this not being anything but a rights-based approach to disability inclusion. So now it's no longer a suggestion, it's no longer a request, it's no longer a prayer item, it is now law.
Now, the Act, of course, addresses a wide range of rights from, equality, non-discrimination to, legal capacity and accessibility. Yes. I mean, are there any specific, probably, provisions you feel represent a particular significant step forward in trying to know, represent a particular significant step forward for disability rights in Kenya, and why?
Yes, I think there's loads. Let me just touch upon employment and economic sort of freedoms. So the law establishes adjustment orders, for example, that require public and private entities to modify their facilities to accommodate PWDs. So that means that now there is, through this law, the permission or the mandate given for people to have their buildings assessed to make sure that is this building compliant with international standards for disability inclusion. And then if you are not, then the National Council for Persons with Disabilities are now able, through the law, to submit an adjustment order to you, for example, here or anywhere in the country, and say, okay, we've assessed your building and it's missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you do not comply with those adjustment orders, then through this law, then you are you may be fined up to 5 million shillings or 5 years in prison or both. So that's something that's really, really important. I found it to be, because I'm an expert and I work in inclusive mobility and transport even before I came to Senate. And so this issue about being able to walk into a building, use the building, understand the building, and not having anyone support you or having to be carried or, things like that, it's very important, because that, if you think about it, if I cannot get into a building that has ECD education, I cannot access that. If I go to a high school or a primary school that I cannot access, then I will miss out on primary education and high school education. If I cannot go to a campus for university that is accessible to me, that means I miss out on a degree. And then you keep going up and up. Workplaces, if I cannot walk into a workplace, that means I don't have a job. I continue in the poverty cycle. So buildings and streets are a really big issue for me, and I want to highlight that very much in the bill. And one other one that really has seems to have really touched people very much is the provision on tax exemption for parents and caregivers who take care of people with disabilities who have severe disabilities, which means that they cannot take care of themselves and their daily needs on their own, and so their parents have to take care of them 24/7. So that is something that I feel will be a huge milestone once there are regulations put in place to actualize these provisions.
You mentioned about employment, access to employment, access to education, access to services, access to, buildings. Now, what does the Act say if, you are discriminated on, on the basis that, you have a disability and you're supposed to access all these employment, education, and somebody discriminates you, solely because of a disability?
Yes, that has also punitive action against that. That's in the law. Now, according to this act, you are unable to get away with discriminating against a person with disability, whether it's to bar them from employment, bar them from education, from healthcare services, from accessing court systems as well. It even says in the bill that now court systems have to have, for example, sign language interpreters who are available for all matters, not just, you're waiting for a deaf person to walk in, then everyone is helter-skelter looking for an interpreter. So things like that are now mandated, and there is punitive action against it.
Aside from that, the Act is there, but legislation, has to go hand in hand with implementation. What are the key steps that should be put in place to make sure that this Act
Council of Governors, because they're the CEOs of our counties, right? So through the COG and lobbying and working with them hand in hand to make them understand that this is also a priority in their counties. Every single county has people with disabilities. We are, according to WHO, we are about 15% population, PWDs. And if you take 55 million people or so who are in the country, divide that by 15%, that is almost 8 million people across the country. So every single county will have an interest in this act. And it of course, across the different sections, it delineates all of the different functions. Okay, counties, this is your job. National government, this is your job. So they will have it clearly in the act.
They have to work in tandem and
Absolutely.
make sure that comes to fruition.
Yes,
now,
and one thing that also I should probably mention at this juncture is that there are some counties already with their own county disability acts. I know like Kiambu has one of their own, for example, but the law says, the constitution says that once there is a national level act, then all of the county acts, they need to fall under the national one.
Or they need to conform to that.
Correct.
Yes.
So even though there are a few counties I know of that have their own disability act, now this is now in place, they will now have to conform to it.
Now, let me take you back a bit. There is the National Council, which was restored, I believe. The National Council, what roles is it supposed to play?
So National Council does a lot of work. It does a lot of work in registration. That is one of their core mandates, to go around the country and find and register persons with disabilities, so that we can get a disability certificate. And with that disability certificate, we can then use it to acquire benefits, to acquire things like tax exemption from income, to apply for programs, activities, trainings, rehabilitation, things like that. And the National Council are very much a cornerstone of those kinds of programs and activities. So, but through this act as well, like I said, they now have a new mandate of assessing buildings, assessing technology as well. And by the way, tomorrow is international, it's called Global Accessibility Awareness Day. It happens every May. That's tomorrow. So even the National Council will be mandated to make sure that people's websites are accessible. E-citizen is accessible. Things like SHIF and SHA, anything that is online or digital based, they will also have to be the ones to make sure that they're cracking the whip on those kinds of technology, so that people with disabilities can also access them. So they have a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, I see in this finance bill of 25, 26, our budget for National Council has been reduced. It used to be 159 million, no, 259 million, and now it's gone down by 100 to 159, sadly. And we had actually asked for an increase, but instead it has been slashed even further. So we don't know how they're going to continue or even implement the new roles they have.
That's what I wanted to ask. Challenges are you anticipating after, this bill became an act? You have to anticipate some challenges.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you're anticipating?
First of all, I think the biggest challenge will be data, because without accurate data, then you cannot really plan properly for anything. So right now, you will know from the most previous census of 2019, people with disabilities were counted as 900,000. But 10 years prior, in 2009 census, we were counted at 1.3 million. So we dropped about 400,000 in 10 years. Don't ask me how, because I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that the general population in Kenya is rising, but apparently PWDs are falling in numbers. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So clearly the data is wrong. So if the data is wrong, and I always say, if you don't count us, we do not count. That means we don't count in budgetary allocation. That means that you're giving us less money, like I just talked about, National Council. The budget is being slashed because they think, you're only 900,000 in the country, so you don't need that much money. But actually, we're far more. We just haven't been counted properly. So I think that's one of the challenges that I foresee, being something that gives a lot of headache to many, to the realization of this bill in full, of this act in full.
Yes.
Number two, I also think a big challenge will be getting the regulations in place. The act is now here. It's now for me and parliamentarians and anyone of interest to this topic to push cabinet, to be like, cabinet, we need regulations, because regulations is what brings to life a piece of law.
Definitely, you have to look at the act after some time, and see whether whatever you put in place is working or not. I mean, how will you measure that?
Well, apart from regulations, I think as time, this is not a perfect law. Let me just start by saying that, actually. So as the regulations get created and they're put in place, and they're rolled out year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. There will be, I'm sure, amendments that come along the way.
Yes.
There'll be members of parliament who feel, okay, this section over here doesn't look like it's working, so let's tweak it, let's amend it through parliament processes. So I think as we continue, the bill will continue to get stronger and better, because we will see the gaps and we'll see things that are working, not working, or things that can improve through amending the bill, the act. And I think that will be a good place to start. But in terms of my reviewing of the act, I will absolutely. I will always be listening to the ground, to my people, my constituents who say, Senator, section, but it's not really working. We've never felt it. We've never even seen it come to fruition. We've never been asked about, accessing this kind of right of freedom that you wrote in the law. So how can we change it? And if I have to do it myself, I'll go and amend my own act.
Senator, as we wrap up this conversation, what's your message to persons with disability out there?
Wow, my message to PWDs is, take peace and pride in being different. Yeah, it can take you so far if you, number one, accept it in yourself, because many of us out there haven't even accepted it in ourselves yet. But once you do that, look at me, I'm an example. My life has accelerated 1,000-fold since accepting my disability, embracing my disability, and actually using it to progress myself. So I would say that, and I would also say, number two, God has not forgotten you. He did not pick on you. He has actually picked you to be great. So use your disability to innovate, to be creative, to be a problem solver, to think differently than the rest. I think it's a real honor to be unique.
Thank you very much. That is Senator Crystal Asige, of course, talking to us about the Persons with Disability Act 2025. And her message, of course, to persons with disability out there is take peace and pride in who you are. She's given us, what to expect, the challenges they will be expecting to the law to face. But she said that they are ready to tackle them, and she's ready to listen to persons with disabilities on where they feel that it's working and where they feel that it's not working, and amendments can be done to that. That is where we wrap up KTN Prime tonight. My name is Robinson Okenya. Our sign language interpreter is Pretty Janet. Have a good night.